So warm welcome to those who are here. My name is Wander Jager from the University of Groningen, working on social complexity issues. And we also have Xiaoni Wang. Can you introduce yourself, Xiaoni?
Yes, of course. My name is Xiaoni Wang. I'm originally from China, and now I located in the Netherlands to work with Wander. And my main interest is using age-based modeling to explore the individual behaviors, how the individual behaviors shape the collective outcomes. That's where my focus on now.
So I'll start sharing my screen and run you through a hopefully interesting webinar where we want to reflect on conflicts in planning processes and how to use the dialogue tool to address these potential conflicts. And in this context, we will first start with a brief introduction of the methodology. Then we will discuss the tool's feature and the usage of usage modes. Then we have a case study. We will discuss a number of policy scenarios. You will have the opportunity for experimentation with online tools. And afterwards, we have ample time for questions and answers. So without further ado, let's go to the content. Very often, we deal with big challenges in society to adapt to changing climate issues, to support ecological systems and so on. And obviously, it's also important to do that in a manner that as many people are happy with it. So we're dealing with socio-economic and ecological issues or challenges. And we are promoting very much sustainable development here, addressing this in a broad sense. It's not only about nature, but it's obviously also about people. And in making these kinds of decisions, we are often facing projects in which a whole community is involved. So this means it's a big challenge to engage communities in this collective decision-making on plans that have an impact on all people, perhaps in a different way. And what we basically see is some challenges, or called obstacles, in realizing these kinds of change activities in practice. First of all, usually people have a resistance to change. Usually people do not like to change. Next, people obviously can have different perspectives on plans and projects, and even develop a kind of polarized views. And if you have a polarized view in a society, you have a problem. Next, very often people are quite uncertain about what the change is going to bring for them. And people do not like uncertainty. Also, this can contribute to resistance. And last but not least, people very often face a trade-off between potential long-term progress and benefits, but perhaps at the cost of short-term urgent needs. So, to address these kinds of challenges and processes, we think that it's important to reflect on participatory processes in democratic societies. And what we want to do is model these kinds of dynamics to better understand the social dynamics. And for that, we use simulations, because simulations provide a very nice visualization of the social dynamics that can take place in these kinds of projects. We can explore what kind of possible scenarios can emerge in a local community when they are confronted with a plan. So it offers also a kind of virtual testing ground and getting a kind of understanding of what kind of processes might happen if you start discussing about a certain plan. And once you have these kinds of visualizations and simulations, presenting them to the people, they can foster deliberate dialogues about, hey, what is it that we want to obtain with our community? Some key advantages of using these kinds of simulations is that they are very cost effective, because you can run them on the computer, you can play all kinds of scenarios, you can adapt them to the situation at hand, so they're very flexible, and they contribute to stakeholder engagement and reflection. So we think that these kinds of simulation offer a new tool in stimulating discussions and dialogues in local communities. So we want to use these agent-based simulations as a dialogue tool, stimulating real dialogues between people that are dealing with practical problems. And for that, we implemented a modeling framework, which is called HUMAT, into agent-based models underlying this dialogue tool. So this HUMAT framework supports a simulation of a community. And for this, to realize that, we have to transform real citizens' interests and their motivations into personalized agents. On the right-hand side, you see a screen here with a number of agents, and they can have very different perspectives. We, for example, see a number of them wearing a red hat, which means that they are less enthusiastic about the plan. When we see a group with green hats that are more positive about this project. And we see that this positive group is not unified, but they have different colors, indicating that they have different speaking power and motivations. Also, you see that they are very much networked. They're all connected in a social network. And when we run these kinds of simulations, we can dynamically follow the process over time. What is happening in terms of trust building? Do polarization processes happen? Or do they develop a consensus on a plan? So this allows us to enable scenario creation and getting an overview of possible dynamics. And I'll show you just how this looks like. Here we see the dynamics happening. They're starting to talk. And we see basically that a lot of the blue agents are attracted to the group on the left. And the group in the left succeeds in getting a majority of people being against this plan. And we see only a small group of big enthusiast agents remaining in a relative isolation, still being in favor of the plan. So if they are really advocating for the plan, they failed to make the rest of the community enthusiastic about this plan. Now, you can imagine what is behind these simulated people. How do we do that? And just to shed a little light of what is under the hood of these simulated people, we use a framework called HUMAT, and this is providing an agent-based modeling architecture for modeling these social dynamics. And it all starts with individual needs. And mind that they can have a social need, and that you want to belong to a group, but you can also have an individual need that is focusing on, for example, values that people have, ecological values or values for having a materialistic lifestyle. You can also have needs related to the mess that perhaps a plan will have in your neighborhood, and you don't like that. Perhaps it's costing you money or making something more attractive or less attractive. And that means that sometimes you can experience a situation that you are, for example, in favor of a plan, but that most of your neighbors are against it. So that's where a cognitive dissonance happens. Basically, the trade-off is becoming very difficult. And when you have a conflict between these needs, experiential needs, social needs, values, then this cognitive dissonance may drive people to start interacting with one another. And how does it happen? First of all, you can inquire other people and try to check, hey, what are your opinions? What can I learn from you? On the other hand, if you experience a situation that a lot of people in your network are having different views, you can try to convince them of your perspective. And in that case, you are signaling to other people what your opinion is. And this is basically the engine that is running behind this simulation tool that we will discuss more in detail now. And I think I'll hand it over now to Xiaoni, who will guide us through how we implemented this in the dialogue. So Xiaoni, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Vander. Thanks for the introduction. I'm sharing my slides.
Yes, we can see the vertical.
Yeah. Great. As Vander mentioned, like one of the purpose of the dialogue tool is to bring in people from different backgrounds and various stakeholders from backgrounds in this participatory modeling or participatory democratic process. So it's very necessary to consider the group segmentation. And for this, we draw the inspiration from the classic seniors milieus. And for these seniors milieus, they use two different dimensions to divide people, to categorize people. One dimension is social situation, and the other is value orientation. And in the democratic settings, so we prefer to use terms more adapted to this democratic settings. So we use adjusted original two dimensions into the level of influence and the stance of progressiveness and conservativeness. And for the model reasons, we also simplify it as two more simple terms. One is against or for the change, which indicates a person's willingness to accept the change or the new plans. And the other one is to be less or more focal. This indicates a person's willingness to express or share its opinions or attitudes. And except for the group segmentation in the collective actions and also in the collective decision making, it's very important to consider the interplay between the social influence and the self-assertiveness. And the former one, social influence, indicates to what extent the people or the individuals tend to conform to the larger group or being influenced by the group norms. And the former, the latter one, self-assertiveness, indicates how persons stick to their original ideas or original positions. And as you can see from the figure, for according to these two dimensions, you can form three different strategies, and these strategies inform the individual's act and how they interact in the process. As you can see from the figure, when there's a very strong social influence, but a relatively low self-assertiveness, and people may adopt the strategy. It's called conformity. That means in this strategy, people will conform to the norms. And if the self-assertiveness is very high, but with a low social influence, and individuals may adopt the strategies called autonomy. That means individuals prefer to maintain their autonomy. And if the social influence and assertiveness, both of them are very high or very low, then they will go into some uncertain situation. Once they face uncertainty, they may try to adopt the strategy to mitigate this kind of uncertainty. Here we call it a social interaction. And as Vander just mentioned, the two strategies are involved in this dissonance reduction or the dissonance mitigation process. One is signaling and the other is inquiry. Signaling means when you face kind of the dissonance, you try to convince other people to adopt your opinions and in this sense, you may obtain the social approval from others. And the other strategy is called inquiring. It's kind of like you obtain information from your connected groups, or from your neighbors or from your friends, and to uphold your own cognition, and then to kind of reduce distance. And here I'm going to explain the decision-making process of the extended HUMAT. And here you can understand this process through three interconnected levels. But the three interconnected levels do not show a sequential relationship, but try to explain the process in different depths and details. For example, the community level, you have the process called decision making. Actually, this decision making is more detailed or deeper explained in this individual level. And also for this social interaction process, it's more detailed explained in the interaction level. As you can see, for the three interconnected levels, and it's called the community level, individual level, and the interaction level. And from the community level at the initial stage, and the people involved in this community will form their initial opinions, and then they will go through the decision-making process and take the action. And this decision-making process basically it's kind of like the individual try to figure out what kind of strategy they will take to deal with the situation. And just as I demonstrated, there will be three strategies involved in this process, either to take the strategy autonomy or conformity, or if you enter the like uncertain situation, you may need social interaction to reduce this uncertainty. And so for this interaction level, you can see the graph at the right side. If you, like the individuals face dissonance, they may face two types of dilemmas. It's one dilemma is social dilemma, the other dilemma is non-social dilemma. And how do we define this social or non-social dilemma? It's related to the three basic needs. If you fulfill the experiential needs and the value needs, but the social need is not fulfilled, then you can face a social dilemma. And the other way around also is a social dilemma. And the non-social dilemma is like, and social need is fulfilled, but the other two types of needs are not fulfilled. It's called non-social dilemma. And for each of the dilemma, they will have a corresponding strategy to reduce consonance and to solve the dilemmas. And then like the attributes or the satisfactions of the individuals will be updated, and then they will go into another cycle of this process. So here is basically the process of decision making. And we prepared a short introductory video to introduce the dialogue tool. So I will share the video with you guys. So for from this short introductory video, you will quickly get the idea behind the dialogue tool and how the dialogue tool being used in the process.
When people in a community come together to address challenges such as setting up heating networks or planning road construction, their diverse backgrounds offer a range of perspectives. Each person's unique viewpoint can offer valuable insights and solutions. Yet, diversity can sometimes result in one plan that some people are not happy with. Remember that, considering the impact on others, not just our interests, is key to making decisions that benefit everyone. Nevertheless, reaching a consensus seems impossible in certain instances. Lack of awareness and misunderstandings can lead to people feeling disconnected from one another and from the issues at hand. So, how do we break through these barriers and foster more productive dialogues? How do we raise awareness and ensure that everyone feels heard and understood? Join us as we embark on this journey of collective problem-solving, where together, we can make a real difference in our community. Get ready for the fun part. We've got a dialogue tool to help us out. Think of it like a microscope, zooming in on the dynamics of human interaction and influence. It also serves as a mirror, reflecting individuals and fostering connections, even evoking laughter, thus steering the conversation towards a more engaging path. With this dialogue tool, we can explore how individuals with diverse interests express themselves and navigate complex situations. So get ready. We're about to delve in and uncover what we can discover together.
In this dialogue tool, an individual or a single person is symbolically depicted as a node or a head. Just like neighbors gathering to exchange ideas, groups of individuals converge within the tool, interacting and influencing each other's opinions. Within the tool's community, individuals are distinguished by the color of their faces. For instance, those with blue faces belong to the blue group. They may advocate for innovation and express themselves boldly, depicted with larger heads. They wear green hats to signal support for ongoing plans, with wide smiles indicating their satisfaction. Meanwhile, individuals with pink faces are part of the pink group. They may favor the status quo and be more reserved, depicted with smaller heads. They wear red hats to signify opposition to the plan, with sad expressions reflecting their dissatisfaction. Furthermore, some individuals may display indifference, showing neither happiness nor sadness towards the plan.
People frequently engage in conversations, often backing their friends' viewpoints, yet sometimes facing disagreements. As conversations unfold, opinions may change.
When discussing plans within a community, everyone needs to have a voice, isn't it? We can mirror this dynamic in the dialogue tool by facilitating interactions among different groups. Take, for instance, the blue group, typically inclined towards innovation, and the pink group, often preferring the status quo. However, it's worth noting that some groups may be more vocal than others. Groups with larger heads tend to be more outspoken, while those with smaller heads may be more reserved and quieter. To see whether people are unhappy or happy with a plan, we can look at 3 key factors. Firstly, consider how the plan impacts your own daily life. Secondly, assess whether the plan's objectives align with your personal beliefs. And thirdly, consider whether your friends and neighbors agree with you.
Moving forward, we will show you what the dialogue tool looks like. Let's start by imagining a scenario from your context, such as a local government proposing road construction through a residential area. Each member of the community has the right to voice their position, whether to support or oppose. These stances are shaped by various factors including convenience, safety, aesthetics, ecological considerations, and more. In the dialogue tool, community members are grouped and positioned based on their stance and satisfaction level. Those supporting the plan are placed to the right, while those expressing more satisfaction are elevated upwards. For example, someone in the top right corner strongly supports the plan and is happy, while someone in the bottom left corner opposes it and feels unhappy.
Let's explore how this tool mirrors dynamics in diverse community scenarios. In the first scenario, 2 groups favor change, with one being more vocal than the other. Through dialogue, their support for the plan becomes clear, and almost everyone is happy. That is a great outcome. In the following scenario, one group strongly supports the plan while the opposing group is less vocal, leading to polarization and weakened connections between the groups, indicating a decline in community solidarity. This is an outcome we seek to avoid. In the third situation, although a majority ultimately supports the plan, a notable portion remains dissatisfied. These individuals align with the plan due to social pressure rather than genuine contentment. Such an outcome is undesirable. Ideally, just like in the real world, we aim for broad support and maximal happiness among all involved.
Well, this was just a quick explanation of how the dialogue tool aids in understanding potential community dynamics during plan discussions. It not only illustrates possible outcomes, but also prompts reflection on actual plans. Is everyone truly happy with the plan? Might there be unheard voices of dissatisfaction? Or are some expressing support when they think it's not that great? Regardless, it's important to listen to those with differing opinions, especially those who may not speak up. After all, in a society changing, mutual support is essential.
This is a short version of the dialogue tool. We've also prepared the full version of the tool. Yes, here are the links. Those links are the online references to the dialogue tool. You can see we have a short version of the introduction video and the full version. With this full version, we contain more details in the video, and combined, we also have a user guide step by step how to use the dialogue tool and the dialogue tool itself. And also, we created a questionnaire for obtaining feedback of the users. I will share those kinds of references to the chat because we are going to use some of them later. And in the following, we will demonstrate the use and the potential of the dialogue tool with a case. And imagine that the local government want to construct a wind farm, and which promotes community, a surrounding community involved in this participatory decision-making process. And each members of this community, they will have the right to vote to support or oppose this proposal. And this proposal may raise considerations like the experience considerations like noise or safety concerns of the construction process also, and also the value aspects like the aesthetics and also the ecological impacts of this wind farm. And people may take a different position as they hold down the different needs for those kind of considerations, and they may like form their initial opinions according to the expected experience values and also the opinions from their neighbors or from their friends. And in the following, we are going to investigate the community dynamics in different scenarios. In the first scenario, it's a very common scenario. As a citing, you will have a larger group that is slightly opposed the proposal, and a very small group that is very in favor of the plan and very assertive and outspoken. They kind of very strong opinions. And you can say the blue group is like the assertive group and the outspoken group, and the pink group, which is less assertive and more silent. And what do you think will happening in this process? As you can see, when the simulation progress, the larger pink group tend to conform to the smaller blue group. Why is that? This is because, according to the sightings, pink group is less assertive and very silent about their opinions. So, and also the blue small blue group is very assertive and quite strong in their opinions. They kind of form a new norm, and at the end, the larger group conform to the small group, and which is not the favorable outcome for the community. And for the second scenario, we try to explore, because from the scenario one, we see the silent and assertive group conform to the small group, because of the small group is very much strong and assertive. And what will happen if the larger group, they can maintain a bit their initial opinions? That means they increase their self-assertiveness at the beginning. What will happen in this case? Let's say from the simulation, you can say they're kind of like from the pink group. At the beginning, some of the pink group, they hold the support opinion, and the larger group, can say the larger pink group, they hold the position. And as the simulation progress, the pink group kind of strengthen their opposition position. That's because enhance the group identity of pink group, which is in a sense might be good, because you can say they have a high satisfaction, that you can say from the video, most of them with a smiling face. But so like there's also an expected consequences of this kind of a scenario, because you say the two groups are completely divided from each other. Although for their small group, they strengthened their group identity, they can have a strong belongings within their small group. But for the larger community, it's very detrimental, because between group or the or the cross groups, there's no communication channels at all, which is the least outcome for the community. So we are kind of curious about, is it possible to reconcile the very divided community into a more consensus one? So we also create a scenario in this dialogue to all the sightings remain the same with scenario 2, but only one different sighting is during the simulation process. We introduce an intervention, and this intervention aims to mitigate the resistance of the pink group. Let's say what will happen in these sightings. You can say at the beginning, the situation just mirrors scenario 2. But the difference is we kind of introduce the intervention like in the middle of the simulation. And you can say once the intervention is introduced, part of the pink group members, they quickly switch to support. That means their resistance were mitigated by the intervention, but also a small group of pink members, they slowly conform to the larger group. That means their true attitudes might not be really like support this proposal, but also because of the social conformity, they have to support the opinion of the larger group, which might not be the ideal intervention strategy. But as you can say, still the intervention strategy here is partially effective, because it mitigates part of the members' resistance. And also with this planned intervention, you can say at the end, they reach kind of consensus, although it might be the superficial consensus, because you can still say like a small portion of the supporters, they have the crying face. That means they are not really satisfied with their choice, but being kind of conformed to the larger group. Yeah. And the scenario 3, we just simply implement intervention in this scenario. And actually, we have a more detailed design of the development of policy scenarios. And how we design this, we consider three very key questions. One is about who should be targeted in this intervention. And the second one is when to implement this intervention. And the third one is about how to implement the intervention. kind of how the intervention take effect on the targeted groups or the targeted members. And you can say, according to the 3 questions, we form a framework of the policy scenario development. And for the first one, intervention method answers the question of who. We propose the 2 types of intervention method. One is called a blanket intervention. This indicates, like, for this intervention, we involve all the membership in this intervention. And the targeted intervention, this is kind of a particular, we only involve a particular group, such as a less satisfied group or like a more resistant group in this intervention process. And second one is intervention timing. And this is very up to the length of the planning process. We can, according to the planning process, it can be divided into the early intervention, midterm intervention, and the late stage intervention. A third one is intervention strategies. It's like how the intervention take effect on the targeted groups or the targeted members. And we form 5 strategies according to 3 aspects. And these 3 aspects directly or indirectly influence individual attitudes, all the individual like interactions. And the first strategy is called network reconstruction strategy. Like, as you can see from the name, it's kind of related to the network rebuild in the simulation process. The second one is to adjust the need priority, because as previously demonstrated, we kind of involve 3 types of needs in this process, and they attach different importance for different needs. And this strategy is very much related to adjust the need priority in this process, and you can adjust the need priority of the like non-social needs that related to the experiential needs and also the values. And also the second one is like a social identity strategy. This is related to adjust the need and importance of social needs of importance. And the third aspect, which is directly related to the individual satisfaction, which you can adjust it or try to intervene the resistance of a group of the whole members or the whole community. And also you can adjust the support for the targeted group of the members. So according to the 3 dimensions, we form a space of the policy scenarios. And kind of here we have 30 combinations of different types of policy scenarios. So we use a network reconstruction strategy as an example. You can say for the strategy, we take the network reconstruction strategy, and then the intervention timing, we can choose early, midterm, or late. And also the intervention method, we can choose being blanket or being targeted. Like instance here, we use drawing the heating network as an example. Like we, for the early blanket interventions, we kind of organize town hall meetings or for the community forums to encourage people to discuss issues with their neighbors, try to connect with different connections, not just within your social circles, but try to like connect with people beyond your social circles. And also similar as the previous one, here we use a strategy, resistance mitigation strategy as an example. And if you implement this strategy in the midterm of this planning process, you can choose to be a blanket intervention or a targeted intervention. For being blanket, you can also organize a community-wide workshops. For the targeted, maybe you can just organize a small-scale workshops for the more dissatisfied groups or more resistant groups. Try to discuss the concerns of theirs, why they try to oppose this plan. Before experimentation with this dialogue tool, I'll guide you with the interface of the dialogue tool. So later, I will share the link access to the dialogue tool. As you can see from the interface at the right top corner, you will see there are 3 languages of this tool. Here we have an English version, Italian version, and the Portuguese version. But under the English version, we have 3 different levels of complexity. But for the other 2 languages, they are quite based on the previous model, so the early model, so they haven't been updated yet. So later, if you experiment with the dialogue tool, I recommend with the English versions. And at the left side of the dialogue tool, you can see the buttons and the sliders. The buttons and sliders, they are used for set up the scenarios and also to start the model. And in the middle of the dialogue tool, you can see a square. It's called the simulated world, or it's just a model window. This model window is based on what you have set up. At the right side of the interface, you can see we have switch and output and monitor and the graphs. And it's basically for the model features and the group information. If you create different groups and you want a review of the information group, so you can review it from this output. And also for the simulation results, we provide a monitor. It's a real-time monitor. It shows the percentage of the opponents and the supporters, and also 2 graphs. The upper graph shows the numbers of the supporters and the opponents, and the lower graph shows supporters, opponents, but with emotional state. So they are happy supporters or unhappy supporters, or happy opponents or unhappy opponents. You can explore it later. And for the 3 levels of complexity, we provide the level 1. It's a beginner level. It's a simple entry model. So from this model, you can easily set up a scenario because this kind of level with nice sliders. And in the middle, the interface may be a little bit different from the main interface. And as you can see, this main type of the interface is based on dialogue to level 2. This is level 1 with less sliders and the layout. And the feature of this level 1 is kind of, you can at the left corner, you can see there is an outcome of the vote. You can easily see the results of the vote, because in this level of model, we can see the result after vote, and you can see the pink hat agents. They all have a smiling face because they win the vote, and the green hat agents, they all have a crying face because they lose the vote. So this is a main feature for this level. And also at the right corner, you can see there's a graph showing the opinion distribution. For level 2, the main feature is you can set up different groups with the sliders. At the left side of the interface, you can see with step 3, setting the group, you can set up different groups. But if you decide the the numbers of the groups, like from the citing community. If you set the number of groups is like 2, and then you have to repeat the step 3 for 2 times. If you set the number groups like 3 or 4, then you have to repeat the citing the groups step 3 for 3, 4, or 5 times. And then you, for the step 4, you run the model. This is the main feature of level 2. And also we have level 3. This is a more advanced model, and we integrate more features and more functions in this level. And as you can see, the main difference from previous versions is we integrate a number of authority. From the left side of the interface, you can say it's we integrate a number authority, and also we integrate a section. It's called a policy intervention. And from this policy intervention, you can create basically the 30 combinations of the different policy scenarios, just as I stated. Yeah. Okay. So from now we can go to the experimentation session. I'll send all the links in the chat. So I will leave you maybe 20 minutes for this exploration. Is that okay? So we come back for at my time now it's 4:20. So we come back on 4:40.
Yeah, and then if you share the links, I think for everyone, happy playing. If you're new to agent-based modeling, I would suggest starting with the first model. And also because this is a model running on the internet, it is much slower than when you run a model locally. So if you have a lot of agents, then the model will be very slow. So we recommend using just a few agents, then you see some more dynamics happen.
Yes, if you are more interested in the agent-based models, I recommend to download the model and download the software. It's called NetLogo, because with this software, and you can create a larger scale community. But with the website, it's not recommended to create a very large scale community. Otherwise, it takes ages to run a step.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we had a bit of playtime, and I can imagine it was really a lot. If you have a very short moment to get acquainted with these kinds of models, it can be rather overwhelming. You can imagine if you have a workshop and you have plenty of time, that you can take much more time in explaining how such a model works. And we also realized that in many situations, you first have to get acquainted with these kinds of social dynamics before you enter the field of agent-based modeling. And specifically for that, we are working on an educational project, and we just want to briefly show you some things that we have developed there that can serve as a very nice introduction into social dynamics and agent-based modeling. So I'll share my screen here. And then we have to go here. And this is from the project called Actiplex. And in Actiplex, which is a project focusing on navigating social polarization, we have developed a so-called paperclip game of opinions. Now, what's the background of this? Well, very often people tend to simplify very complex multidimensional problems to a good versus evil narrative. Either you're in favor of something or against it, neglecting very often the multiple dimensions and the complexity behind it. And teasingly, I usually like to call this Walt Disneyification, the reduction of complex multidimensional problems to a one-dimensional duality. So let's go to this one-dimensional duality. And we can use the social judgment theory for that, which is from 1961 of Sherry van Hofland, where we have one dimension, and for example, left versus right. And we can position, for example, two agents, two people on this dimension. We see Mel tends a little bit more to the left hand side, and Ian is more leaning towards the right hand side. Now, what happens if they're close enough? Then we will see that they attract to each other. This is the process that we call assimilation. But imagine that we have a radical left winger. Then it's likely that you have a contrast effect and that this yellow person moves away from that position. What is very interesting in this social judgment theory is that if you have more fear about an issue, you will be less accepting for different opinions. So you will be more likely to engage in contrasting. If you have less fear, you will be more accepting for different opinions and assimilation. So we can play with this theory using simple rulers and placing a paperclip on that expressing your opinion. For example, here we have a person with opinion 4, and here we have a person with an opinion 6. So between those two, we have a difference of 2. Now, suppose you have an acceptance value of 5, so you're quite tolerant. Then assimilation will happen. You see, both of them move to each other. However, suppose you have an acceptance value of 5 and the opinion difference is 2.5. But the acceptance level should be low in this case. But if the opinion difference is larger than the acceptance level, then you would generate a contrast effect and people would move away from each other. Now you can play this very easy with a material that we have. We have a description, a manual of playing this game, including the possibility of printing out these rulers. So you only need a few paper clips and you can play the game. You can give, for example, the players a distribution of opinions in the beginning and an acceptance level and play out a variety of situations, some of them leading to polarization and other ones leading to consensus. It's a very nice exercise to have a discussion on the social dynamics of opinions. So at the end of each game or each experiment, we can rank the rulers on the basis of the number from low to high. And here you see, for example, a distribution of opinions for a number of players. And we can summarize the results on a whiteboard and see under which conditions we see polarization happening. For example, here we see a polarized situation, or that you reach consensus, for example, in this condition. Now you can imagine that playing such a game makes it very easy to replicate in a simulation, because in the simulation we can select the same number of participants and acceptance values. So we think this offers a very natural introduction into simulation models. And from there, you can continue with simulation models that are a little bit more advanced with respect to, for example, the number of people involved and the issues at hand. And we also alternatively, in particular when the weather is very warm, you can play the same game with glasses of water and using spoons to exchange water. And here the water level expresses the opinion that people have. Well, if you're interested in this, we are happy to share material on this. So here we see, for example, a distribution emerging of glasses of water that are not equally filled. So the big question now is, how can we stimulate dialogues? And we think that exercises like this with paperclip games and with simulation models open a perspective on the group level rather than on the individual level when you talk about projects. it is important to become aware that other people may have valid but different perspectives. And such games make you aware of these kinds of group dynamics and how important it is to keep an open discussion to avoid polarizations to happen. As we often say, people can have different but valid perspectives on the truth, and such a game can help to approach an issue from different angles to develop a more rich perspective on the issue at hand. So, basically, to conclude with this presentation, the purpose of these models are basically to help to understand how opinions form within communities. Understand when do people engage in meaningful discussions, or when do they end up in a very polarized situation and refusing to discuss. Help people to individually reflect on their own position in the context of a community. And moreover, it's important to realize that these models do not provide a precise prediction of what will happen, but it's a very generalized result. It helps to reflect on the processes. This tool that we have developed, we want to exploit it for policy development. Then we will use the more advanced models that are helpful in exploring possible dynamics that could emerge with the implementation of and discussion of a plan. Perhaps a little bit simpler models can be used in community engagement. We can even use the paperclip game and match it with a specific situation. We can also use the simulation models as a reflective tool for community discussions. And the more simple models can be used in educational settings to help discuss the social dynamics taking place in society, in particular making people aware of the dynamics behind polarization. And we think this is a hot topic. And last but not least, the more advanced tools that we have can be used to study basically policy implementations. And what is the best timing of a certain policy? And can you think about particular sequences of particular policies that are more effective than others? Or if you see the first signs of a polarization happening, what kind of actions can you undertake to counter these negative processes? So that's all that we wanted to share with you today. And I think we have a few minutes left for discussion. So please, if you want to discuss something, we are here ready for you.
Hi, Wanda. Hi, Shawnee.
Hi there.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you for such an interesting webinar. I have one question. When we are trying to develop this agent-based modeling, what kind of data that we should collect, or what kind of observation we should do before building the model?
That's a very good question. Very often you see that agent-based models that are being used in scientific projects are very data rich, and you collect a lot of data on populations. But if we want to work quickly in the field, the art is making a simple representation of an issue at hand as quickly as possible. So in our experience, we had, for example, discussion with a group of people on a community garden. And in this discussion, we succeeded in about 15 minutes to identify which groups there were, what their positions were on this community garden, and how influential they were. So that helped us in producing a very stylized model within 15 minutes, running it, and the results were very interesting for discussion. And I'm sorry for my dog, he has a big mouth.
Thank you, Wanda. How about the population? Should our model actually capture the entire population, or we can just use a sample of the population?
Sometimes projects are involving a limited number of people when you think about a neighborhood project. But then still, you deal with possibly hundreds of people. I think the social dynamics that you deal with can also be replicated with a smaller number of agents. As long as you have a sufficient representation of also the more minority groups in the simulation, I think that generated dynamics are good enough for a discussion with people.
All right, thanks, Wanda.
Are there any more questions at this moment? Well, if not, then I would like to thank you all for your attention. I hope you found it an interesting and inspiring webinar. And mind that we have a lot of material available. We shared it through the links. If something is not clear, do not hesitate to contact us by email. We're most happy to share this information, and particular also the material for the workshops that you also can apply yourself in educational contexts. So I hope this is inspiring for you, and hope to hear from you later again. Have a nice day and see you later.